Harumi is by far one of the more divisive characters within the Ninjago community, but the thing is that she wasn't always that way. I would say up until a few years ago, mainly up until the point of Crystallize, she was regarded as one of the best villains we've ever seen in Ninjago. And I have talked about her before. I did a video where I talked about Harumi specifically in the Oni trilogy, and even at the time I said I will do a follow-up talking about her in the Wildbrain era, and I actually did have the video planned out back then, but I have gone through so many revisions when it does come to Harumi, but I feel like I officially know where I stand on her. But I will say, if you haven't watched that video, definitely do so, because this is by all accounts a part 2. But in this video, I am going to discuss Harumi within Crystallized, and basically just describe how she has become one of the worst characters in all of Ninjago, because initially speaking, it was how to write a twist villain, but now, it's how to ruin a character. But to pick up where I did leave off on the previous video, we did basically talk about when Harumi met her ultimate demise, and I think, and I don't really talk about it too much in the video, it was one of the best endings to a character story within Ninjago. I don't think there was many that would ultimately beat it out. The whole point of ending Harumi's story where it was to show the fact that even though she was way beyond the point of return and she was way beyond any sort of redeemable aspect to her, which is really funny in retrospect, the thing is that we get to see a very slight glimmer of her humanity. She sees the exact thing that happened to her as a child happening to another family, and she removes all aspects of self-preservation and she goes out of her way to save that family, and that is what is her demise. She could have by all of accounts survived that attack if she just simply never cared, but a version of Harumi who is much more good came out in that moment, and it was a brilliant end to her story. But for some reason we just simply couldn't have her story end there, because right after the point of her demise, you will find that the Overlord pulled her back to life, saying that he needs now her to serve him and his ultimate plan, and she goes along with it, and she becomes the Venged buyer that is referenced throughout the course of the Wildbrain era. And in reality, looking back at those older seasons, knowing it was Harumi is honestly quite disappointing, because it means that there was one of two scenarios when it does come to the Venged buyer. For one, it means Harumi was always the plan, and they intend on Harumi being back since the very beginning, which I believe it would have been a case if they wanted Harumi to come back not long after they shown off the end of Harumi, which I really don't know how I feel about that. Or the second scenario is the Venged buyer wasn't decided on until later on, and they retroactively made it into Harumi. And honestly, I don't like either scenario, because in my opinion, the Venged buyer should have been someone new. I don't really like the fact it's Harumi, and you'll come to notice that I'm not even sure I wanted her to return to begin with. But that is the point, she returned, and that alone kind of ruins her whole sacrifice to me. It ruins the entire point of her end in Season 9, and that is why I had my initial problems with it. But the thing is that not only does it ruin the sacrifice, it also goes out of its way to ruin every sort of implication that we did have in the Oni trilogy. One of the biggest factors when it comes to Harumi is her dynamic and her relationship with Lloyd, and the Oni trilogy hard firm places her in the motion of, I was manipulating you Lloyd, I didn't even like you Lloyd, I didn't even care for you, and that was honestly fantastic. It did so much and was such an interesting take for a Ninjago villain. However, Crystallize goes back on that and kind of claims that Harumi did have feelings all of those times. And I just quite simply hate that. I truly hate the fact that they brought Harumi back just to give her feelings for Lloyd, because it takes everything away from the Oni trilogy, because it then calls into question, was she manipulating Lloyd to begin with? Was she manipulating Lloyd after the fact? What actually was Harumi's ultimate goal, and what was her mindset? Because the thing is that people have interpreted it as maybe Harumi had feelings later down the line for Lloyd, but the point is that we don't actually have any outright explanation for it. All it does is contradict one and the other, and you have to assume that it's potentially the case of Harumi just simply always had feelings for Lloyd, and the whole Oni trilogy kind of meant nothing. And I'm gonna be honest, if they wanted to commit to the idea that Harumi did have feelings for Lloyd, I wouldn't exactly be the biggest fan of it, but at the same time, I would at least respect the fact that they did go with that creative decision. However, Crystallize has a very bad habit of having Harumi literally change her opinions on Lloyd by the episode. And this isn't even a joke, by the way. If you look at Ninjago quite literally by the episode in Crystallized, you realize Harumi goes from one side of the spectrum to the other. She has many episodes where she feels much more in line with her Oni trilogy self, where she just doesn't really care for Lloyd and she just wants to simply go about her business. But then you have other episodes where she feels weirdly sympathetic towards Lloyd. It's like she was written by two different people. In Harumi's first full episode since returning, there is a very weird interaction between the two of them. Lloyd expressed the fact that he still had feelings for her regardless of everything that she did. However, she feels almost bitter about this and honestly quite upset, because she goes on to say that he never actually looked for her after she fell to the building, and how he never must have cared because he never tried. This feels almost off, and even when Lloyd refutes it and actually says that he did go back and it was basically to no success, she doesn't really care. It doesn't really matter to her, but she still seems very frustrated by the fact that even though he never found her, he did try regardless. And it goes against clearly what she was thinking at the time, but she's not exactly open to the fact that Lloyd clearly did care. What makes this even more interesting is that it technically doesn't even align, in my opinion, with either side of Harumi. A version of Harumi that's more in line with the Oni trilogy would have laughed that off, and would have laughed at the fact that he went back to the building. However, the more sympathetic I actually do have feelings for Lloyd Harumi would have kind of taken to that, would have been more open to the fact that Lloyd actually did try. It's clear that she is more leaning towards that side of this episode, but the fact is that she doesn't even align with either of these motions, which makes it weirder. This only proves further to me that she was just written so inconsistently, because whilst this one is leaning more towards the feelings Harumi, the thing is that it doesn't even either way, and this is the only time she feels this way. But in the following episodes, The Spider's Design, she feels more in line with Oni Harumi. She is mocking Lloyd, she's making fun of him, she's not really caring about him whatsoever. But in The Coming of the King, you see her become more sympathetic, acting more like she has feeling towards him, and even is trying to recruit him, which feels even weirder. But then the following episode after that, she goes back to Oni Harumi. There are several more examples of her going back and forth on this whole motion, but the overall point is the fact that it's so weird how in near enough every single episode, she does go from a state of Harumi not caring for Lloyd and having nothing towards him to Harumi wanting Lloyd. That is the ultimate inconsistency and ruins what was completely established about her beforehand. And all of that is bad enough, and that alone is a reason enough for this video, but it doesn't even pale in comparison to the last few episodes of Crystallized, where everything that I've said negative about her so far goes from bad to downright disrespectful. And by disrespectful, I mean disrespectful to quite literally everything that has been established about Harumi beforehand. In the episode Dragon Form, Harumi realizes that it was actually the Overlord who created and set the Great Devourer on Garmadon, on the Ninja, all in the means of creating a vessel that was ultimately worthy of his return. Harumi realizes that everything was actually by the design of the person that was actually in control of her as well. She lost her parents because of the Overlord, and she believes that the ninja were actually no longer wrong, when in reality that was the only thing she was correct about. Harumi's turn over to the side of the ninja, and to Garmadon more specifically, is utterly hilarious, because she seems to completely forgive Lloyd and the rest of the ninja in that moment. All of the anger that she has had throughout the entirety of the time we've had her character is gone in a single second, when in reality, the ninja technically still were responsible, because they weren't able to stop the Serpentine or the Devourer before her parents ultimately met their own demise. And this is not me agreeing with the ideology of Harumi, but it's the fact that the ninja still did technically play a part in the end of her parents, and I feel like that can't be ignored. But the thing is that that fundamental idea or ideology that she had was already flawed to begin with. She was always upset with the fact that the ninja were never able to save her parents, and then she was angry that the Overlord is the reason her parents are gone, when in reality, she also just weirdly forgave Pythor anyways, because Pythor is the reason the Devourer was even sent out of its tomb to begin with. So she was upset with the ninja, then she was upset with the Overlord, but Pythor was never a question in her mind. And the thing is that you can argue that she never knew that, but remember, she was a ninja fan beforehand, and the Devourer was the product of the Serpentine, and that was fairly well known to begin with. So it's this whole idea that she has this singular person that she's upset with, and it's just so easy to change, and as soon as there's another person to set her targets on, the other person is immediately forgiven. It makes no sense, and it makes Harumi such a one-noted character. It makes her completely 2D. It's just the fact that she needs one specific thing to target her hatred at, and that is literally it. She can be upset with the Overlord, but also be upset with the ninja at the exact same time. But they establish the fact that Harumi is completely okay with the ninja and quite sympathetic towards the ninja after that reveal. And it is by far the biggest case of a character assassination I have ever seen. It takes the fundamental anger that has driven Harumi her entire life and makes it this such a washy kind of allegiance that doesn't really matter no matter where it is. As long as she has one thing she can target, that seems to be it. Whereas Harumi beforehand had this deep-seated hatred for Lloyd. And I think that is where they ultimately did just go wrong. They took all of Harumi's ambitions, all of her motives, and all of her driving factors and just made it into something that could just shift no matter what. And I'm sorry, she just simply couldn't have forgiven the ninja in that moment. I don't think that she should have been able to have such a, oh, I'm sorry, my bad guys moment with the ninja, and then sit there with them for the rest of the remainder of Crystallized. It makes absolutely no sense, and like I said, completely goes against Harumi fundamentally. And again, with everything I've already discussed, you would think that is where it ends, right? That is officially it. That's the worst Harumi could be when it does come to a character. When it actually somehow gets worse. This is not down to Harumi's character specifically, but the fallout of Harumi more importantly, because she has done all of these terrible things. No matter how you shake how her character acts, she has done some of the worst acts possible within the land of Ninjago. And because she turns against the Overlord at the last minute and one offhanded line from Lloyd, which I'm not even going to get into in this video, the fact is that she is just able then to officially walk free. At the end of Roots, she is just in the monastery next to the police commissioner, just fixing up the monastery that she blew up. She is just able to walk free after the fact, even though she has done multiple different atrocities to the land, and everyone just seems to be okay with it. I really don't understand how this is the ending for one of the most evil characters in all of the show. I understand that this is Crystallized we're talking about, and they wanted a nice big happy ending because this was the end of the show of Ninjago before Dragon's Rising. But the thing is that a character like Harumi just quite simply didn't deserve that ending. They treat it as if Harumi's completely redeemed and Harumi is now one of the good guys. And I think that is just where it completely goes wrong. Harumi should have been punished for what she did, just simply down to the fact that she just had to be. She did some of the worst things possible in that season alone. Remember, she is now considered one of the good guys because Lloyd vouched for her, when Lloyd just completely seems to forget that it wasn't even a few episodes before where Harumi attempted to end the ninja and he thought they were gone by all accounts because she blew them up. It just feels like they just don't want to give Harumi any sort of consequence for her actions, and I think that was the biggest part of Oni Harumi for me. The fact is that everything Harumi did had its consequence, and it ended in the ultimate sacrifice because of a small glimmer of her humanity, and that was perfect. A fundamentally flawed and irredeemable character has one more slight moment of good, but was never ever able to truly reconcile herself. Whereas her Crystallized just seems to be allowed to do that. And that is, in my opinion, why they just completely assassinated this character. Because when you take a step back and you look at Harumi as an overall journey, you went from Oni Harumi, which was just this amazing manipulative character, very much on her feet, the ultimate twist villain, one of the best constructed characters, and honestly, one of the best characters that we will see in all of Ninjago, to a character that had a very fleeting morality, a very confused feelings ideal, and honestly, a very weird outcome. It makes no sense. It makes no sense because there's just nothing about Harumi that was able to be picked up on and able to be enjoyed because they just didn't know what to do with her. And what is the solution to this? I honestly do not know. I understand a lot of people wish Harumi was never in Crystallized, and to an extent I do agree with that, because it does ruin her season 9 end. But the thing is that I honestly also don't know who else could take the mantle that she had in Crystallized, and that is a problem with Crystallized in general. But the thing is that I feel like she is a character that could have been done right if they just simply wanted to do her right. But like I said, it just feels like they just simply didn't know what they wanted to do, and whatever did end up sticking was just completely reversing everything that was established about her. Because at the end of the day, it feels like Harumi was not only Harumi. It feels like it's a completely different character, and it feels like it's a character that doesn't even know where she came from. And that ultimately is the reason why she is one of the worst written characters in Ninjago as of her last appearance, and one of the worst cases of character assassination, like I said. But as my final thoughts on Harumi, I truly do believe that Harumi in Season 8 and Season 9 was one of the best characters that we've ever had in the show, and when I look at her in that specific aspect, I do think she is one of the best. But when you do look at Crystallized Harumi, all I see is a mess. All I see is a character that just simply didn't have a firm idea, and a character that didn't know what they actually wanted to do with. There's no consequences, there is no consistency in her, and there's absolutely no reason to appreciate her as a character. Honestly, it is a massive stain on the character of Harumi, and it's very sad to see. But this is where I want to know what you guys think. I would like to know if you do like Crystallized Harumi. Is there anything that you feel like I've not given enough credit to? Is there anything you think I'm honestly wrong about? I would love to hear it, because I personally think that there's just not much to Harumi in this instance. Honestly, it's just the same to see, because honestly, like I said, I really did like her once before, but now I just don't really have much I could say that's nice about her. But thank you very much for watching my video where I've talked about Harumi, and let me know any other characters you would like me to do a deep dive on. I find these very interesting, and I hope you guys do as well. And if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. I love having more people to talk about Ninjago with, and I would love to do it with you as well. And if you do want to support the channel further, which you don't have to, consider becoming a channel member. You could join the Eternal Legends, such as Grandmaster Sensei 28208, or Dad for short. Thank you very much again, my friend. But thank you very much for watching, and take care. Okay, bye!